Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
The light of many torches filled the courtyard with a red glow. The light shone on the big, strong building that looked very powerful. On each side of the main door, the workers stood in two lines. They wore white clothes with purple bands. Their dark faces were lit up by the torches they held high, 50 strong men on one side and 50 on the other. Farther away, in the corners of the yard and at the gate, were many men, women, and even children, in clothes of many colors, from deep red to light pink. These people served one Lord. They were the workers, slaves, and fighters of this Russian prince. Above, black smoke from the burning wood hung in the air. In the bright light below, Prince Galitzin got off his horse and walked slowly. He wore very fancy clothes and had many weapons. He looked like a true prince and king. He walked between the two lines of white-clothed torch holders and up the wide steps. I followed him. In the busy crowd, no one knew who I was, and they thought I was with him. At the top of the steps, he stopped, and I looked past him into the lobby. It was also lit by torches. At the entrance, there were two big bear skins with heads and claws still on them, spread across the door. In the middle of the lobby was a table with a big silver tray. On the tray was a silver statue, bread, and a large silver salt container. Behind this table stood Prince Varnin and a young woman, whom I thought was his new wife. But I only looked at the tall, slim woman in white standing at the table. She looked at us proudly with shining dark eyes. She was Princess Daria. Galitzin also saw only the princess. Following the custom of his people, he stepped on the bare heads and entered the lobby. The princess took 2 steps forward and held out the bread and salt. Her hands were strong, but her face was pale and bright. He took the bread from her hands, broke it, and tasted the salt. Prince Varnin then came forward and hugged him warmly. At that moment, Daria saw me. If she was pale before, now she turned white. Quickly, she came to me as I walked across the bear skins and held out the bread and salt with shaking hands. "Take it quickly," she said in a quiet voice. I knew how important this act was, so I did as she said. As I did, I heard Varnin's deep voice. "Who is there, Daria? I command you not to share bread with him." But she turned and looked at him while I still held her hand. "He saved my life, father," she said in a sweet, clear voice. "And he has tasted your bread and salt. So, he is your guest too, sir." And I felt her hand was cold. Galitzin also turned and looked at me with a strange face. He had many feelings inside him. Did I not escape his men and defy him? But Prince Varnin's face turned hard like stone, and only his eyes showed anger. The stranger next to him, his wife as I guessed, moved forward quickly and grabbed Daria, speaking loudly. "He saved your life, yes, my daughter," replied the prince with a stern and mocking tone. "And his own. But since he is my guest, I will not hang him at the gate, but leave his side. I order you." The princess had already pulled her hand from mine. She stepped back and stood quietly, looking at the floor, while I spoke to her father. "Mr. Prince," I said, "despite many problems, I have escaped from those who wanted to take me to Archangel, and I have traveled south only to see Princess Daria. I understand, sir, that you do not want to agree to a marriage arranged by the Tsarevna Sophia in such strange circumstances. I do not blame you for not trusting your daughter to a stranger. But, Mr. Prince, I have papers that will show my birth and my rank, which are not unsuitable for your consideration. Although I am a foreigner and a stranger, I love the princess deeply. I will not force her to be with me. She is free to choose. If she recognizes the marriage, I am her devoted husband and lover, but she alone must choose. Prince Galitzin could no longer stay quiet. His proud face turned red. It would be good, sir, he said proudly, to prove that your birth is equal to that of the princess. As for the marriage, he snapped his fingers. I looked at him coldly. Mr. Prince, I said politely, let me suggest that you ask Her Highness Sophia Alexeyevna to support your case to Princess Daria. As I said this, I heard a small laugh and saw Vasilissa, the little troublemaker, in the background. Galitzin turned from red to white, and his hand clenched on his sword, but he had no time to answer because Varnin spoke. I have heard you, sir, he said to me, with amazement. There is the door. In 2 minutes my servants will make sure you find it, or remember the bread and salt, my uncle, said Vasilissa softly, pulling at his sleeve. He shook her off, but he bit his lip. As for me, I crossed my arms on my chest and stood firmly in the middle of the hall. Mr. Prince, I said quietly, I am your daughter's husband. I must speak to her and hear her choice from her own lips. From the hands of my slaves, rather, he cried fiercely, his eyes bright with anger. Do you challenge me in my own house, fool? No, sir, I replied calmly. But I must have my answer. As she wants it, so it will be. His face was full of anger, and Galitzin muttered under his breath, touching his weapon. Around us, in a circle that got smaller and smaller, the fierce-eyed workers gathered. The red light of many torches went up and down. Daria stood still like a statue. Answer him, ordered Varnin fiercely. Answer him, you little fool, and be done with it. The man is crazy. Madam, I said to her softly and kindly, I love you. I am your husband if you want. Answer me without fear because I will surely protect you. She looked up, and her dark eyes met mine. Slowly, very slowly, a soft pink color came to her cheeks, but her expression was hard to read. She looked very proud. Do you love me, madam? I whispered. Will you stay my wife? The silence of the place was like the silence of the big empty fields at night. I heard her take a breath. Like in a dream, I saw the ring of fierce faces, the moving fire, the proud figures of the two princes with their hands on their swords, and behind them the child, her cousin, watching with eager eyes. Outside, in the courtyard, a thin, high voice began to sing a welcome song for the princely guest. But with it, there was the sound of swords clashing. She did not speak. Are you mute, my daughter? Demanded Varnin scornfully. Answer him. I tell you. No, Mr. Prince, I said proudly. Of her own free will or not at all. He bowed his head, smiling bitterly. Do I force her? He asked. Madam Princess, I said, I ask you for the last time, will you answer me of your own free will, or do you fear to do so? Of my own free will, she answered in a low voice but very proudly. Will you still be my wife? I asked gently. Will you accept my love and take my name? She took a step back and stood alone and tall. I thank you, sir, for saving my life, she said firmly. and for protecting me from Kurakin. I thank you. But it is best for you to go away. It is best to leave me. I cannot be your wife. She hesitated, took a quick breath, and then added in a clear, low tone, I do not love you. I bowed deeply, and without a word, I turned and walked across the bare skins, down the broad stone steps, into the crowded courtyard, where I saw only angry faces and the flash of naked swords.